Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our IdeaLab. Sorry, need to turn my camera on there. Welcome to our IdeaLab, how modern organizations are creating better customer experiences. Thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to the conversation. For those of you who have attended these sessions before, we're going to be doing things a little bit differently today. We plan to ask for your responses to some polls to help inform the speakers and how they can better share their thoughts with you. You'll see the polls pop up on your screen, and to see the results of those polls, you can open your chat window and you'll see the response pretty much immediately after the poll is completed. I will also share the results of those polls as they come up. Also, if you have any questions for the presenters as we're doing the webinar, please feel free to click on the Q&A button at the top of your screen and ask your question. We'll try to get to those questions during the conversation. If not, we're going to have some time at the end for questions and answers. And if we don't get to your question then, we will certainly follow up with you after the meeting to answer those questions. So I'd like to start out actually with the first of the polls I want to take. It's going to be an instant poll. I want to share a scenario with you and ask for your reaction. So imagine one of your most valued customers, Susan, calls your company. She reaches the automated attendant and asks to speak with John, her sales representative. The system recognizes her number and routes her to John. John picks up and he assumes naturally that Susan is calling to talk about an open opportunity they've been talking about. But that's not why Susan's calling. Susan is frustrated about a support issue with the equipment she purchased a few months ago. She opened a support ticket last week, but she hasn't received an update and wants to know what's happening. Of course, John wants to help Susan with that ticket, but unfortunately, he can't see the support ticket or its status. Only the support team has access to that information. So John, naturally, transfers Susan to support. Now Susan gets placed at the end of the support queue and is told that her estimated wait time is 5 minutes. While she's waiting, something else happens. She receives an email from the marketing team at your company inviting her to an upcoming VIP customer event. Susan looks at the email while she's sitting on hold and thinks, boy, I certainly don't feel like a VIP. And here's what's interesting about that situation. Nobody did anything wrong. John wasn't ignoring Susan. He simply didn't have access to the information he needed. The support team isn't failing her. They're just doing their job. But Susan is now waiting in their queue. And marketing isn't doing anything wrong either. They see Susan as a valued customer, and they're treating her that way. But Susan doesn't experience your company as sales, support, and marketing. She experiences one company. And from her perspective, that one company just made her repeat herself, transfer her to another department, put her on hold, and then send her a message telling her how important she is. Does this sound like something that could happen at your company? I'm launching a poll for you all to provide your responses. So it looks like about 75% of you said this is something that could possibly happen at your company. So let's dig into this topic a little bit further. I'd like to turn to today's panelists, Derek Meixel, Synergy CTO, and Diana Bray from Anywhere Now. Thanks for joining, Diana and Derek. Diana, can you talk about what the number one communication challenges you see organizations struggling with today?
Sure. I mean, if I had to pick one communication challenge that I think organizations are struggling with today, I would say it's delivering a consistent customer experience across multiple communication channels without creating operational complexity, kind of like what you just discussed. Customers expect to move seamlessly between voice, email, chat, or whatever channel that they choose. Yet many organizations still operate these interactions in separate systems. This results in customers repeating the information multiple times, and we all know how frustrating that can be. Excessive transfers between departments, like we just heard in that scenario, long wait times and poor responses. And then it's also very frustrating to the agent, right? They have limited visibility into the full customer journey, increased agent frustration and burnout. So, in contact center conversations that I have today, I often frame it this way. The challenge isn't that organizations have too few ways for customers to communicate, it's that they have too many disconnected ways.
Thanks for that answer. Appreciate it, Derek. Is that pretty consistent with your experience? And secondly, what do you think is the biggest barrier to sort of changing that dynamic within companies?
I 100% agree with what Diana said. I think the biggest barrier, Dan, honestly, is understanding the art of what's possible and how that possibility can help the organization better serve its clients. Right. I think that just the lack of seeing what can happen is a big challenge that people have.
When you say seeing what can happen, you mean having visibility into systems? I'm not sure if I follow.
Yeah. So my take is that, I think not understanding that somebody could tie all those various, channels that Diana described together into one cohesive view of what's going on with whoever's on the phone is the biggest challenge. And that's my take on what is a big barrier.
So I guess we could probably refer to it as a 360-degree view of the person you're interacting with and what their relationship to your company is. Is that a fairly accurate way to say that?
Yes. Thanks. Yep.
Diana, anything to add to that at all?
No, I think Derek kind of hit it on the head there. I think that you have to understand that this is very complex. It's not only complex and frustrating to the customer, but it's also very frustrating to the agent that's involved as well. So what we really are trying to do to kind of take that frustration out by providing them a seamless experience on both ends.
Great. Well, I think we're going to dive into that a little more deeply. I'm going to launch a couple more polls before we get started. I have 2 questions I'd like to ask, and this will help us, again, better frame the conversation and help the presenters get a good sense of where you are in your communications journey with your clients. So the first one is just a quick question about what your current system looks like. So it looks like we have a good percentage of the people on the call using Teams voice. It looks like about 75%. Couple aren't sure. We have some traditional PBX systems on the phone and a couple, or at least a couple from Cisco as well. So that's great. Thank you for your answers to that question. The second question I want to ask is related to your current communication challenges. Oh, wow, that's a good one. Looks like about a little more than half of you say it's internal communication. Oh, we still have more people voting, so I'm jumping the gun a little bit. About half say internal communication. The next highest would be multiple disconnected systems. The third highest being legacy phone systems, and then customer response times. So thank you all for your responses to that. It did change a little bit right at the end. We had a couple come in, but you can see the results in the chat. And I think, based on that, a good place to sort of kick off this conversation today is, why do we think traditional business communications are breaking down? And I'm going to start with Derek on this. A couple people said they have PBX phone systems and legacy systems. Can you talk a little bit about why traditional phone systems are becoming a bottleneck for users?
Yeah, Dan, there are a ton. The older traditional systems are inflexible. Using the word older in your systems indicates most are starting to age out. And a lot of the traditional systems are not designed for remote work. Since COVID, many of our employees are remote, and probably for the majority of folks will probably stay that way. And traditional systems are not really designed for that kind of work environment. And a lot of them also require very special skills to maintain. They have limited scalability. So if you're growing or changing your size of your business, that's a challenge. And one of my biggest points for traditional systems is there are numerous single points of failure, right? So think about what happens if your phone system's down for the day. How would your business react to that? And so that's a conversation we're having on a regular basis. Good question.
Thanks. And Diana, do you think people have a good sense of what they're looking for when they go out into the market and try and replace that legacy system? What's your take on that?
I think most organizations know they need to modernize, but they often underestimate the strategic opportunity. It's no longer about just replacing the phone system per se. Like people know that they kind of need to do that, but they know it. Most of them fear it's going to be a very costly move, and it's usually not. But it's also about enabling collaboration, improving customer engagement, and integrating business applications. They know they need to support their remote workers, and they also know they need to leverage AI. That's all we hear about today, right? The AI is the big buzzword. Organizations that gain the greatest value evaluate communications as part of a broader digital transformation strategy today. So it's not just about replacing to rip and replace to rip and replace. It's about looking at the broader need that's out there.
And I think we're going to get into this a little bit in the next question. But before we do, I'm interested in sort of your take on some modern functionality. And this will bleed into our next question as related to the highest ranked item on the communication challenge, which is internal communication. But I'm wondering, what's some of the functionality that those traditional systems they just weren't designed to accommodate? I mean, Derek, you referenced hybrid work. That's an obvious one, but there are certainly other challenges or functionality that those systems just didn't envision being able to accommodate. So, Derek, can we start with you on that?
So, I think you also mentioned this connectivity into other systems. Let's pull all the data together and give a view of what's going on across the organization. One of the things that I still hear is that voicemails aren't being emailed to the end user that gets them. So that's, if you don't have this functionality, it's a game changer when you move into a more modern system. Getting the application on end user cell phones to give clients that one number to call to get a hold of each person in your organization. That's a big ticket item that many people are challenged with older systems. And that's just a few. I have a ton other, but I'd love to hear Diana's take on this as well.
What do you think, Diana?
I also think that legacy systems were really never built for omni-channel engagement, right? I mean, there's no AI-powered assistance. There's no CRM integrations. There's no advanced analytics. How do supervisors or anybody in the organization supposed to actually see what's going on in their workforce? There's no real-time customer journey visibility. I mean, as you talked about the original scenario that you set out there, how are we supposed to know that? How are we supposed to get rid of that frustration of that caller calling in? I mean, those legacy systems were really designed just to connect a call. That's it.
Right.
They're not to orchestrate the experience.
Right.
I think there's one quick thing to add to that, Dan. Internal communication is knowing if somebody's available to communicate with or not. And one of the big ticket items is presence, right?
Right.
So is that person available? Are they in another meeting? Are they sharing their screen? Are they away? Are they out of the office? Don't even know, like on an older system. So
right.
Yeah, that's a big ticket
Great
item that I
point.
think people sometimes don't think about. So,
And I also think like if you really have interconnected systems and you have a 360-degree view of your customer's journey, it really in some ways shouldn't matter who picks up that call, right? Like if John's not available, it should be able to be routed to someone else and they should have a full understanding and after reviewing something for a moment and be able to have a conversation that says, "Oh, I see how you've interacted with us recently. Is there something related to this I can help you with?" And if it ends up having to be the person they initially called for, certainly at least having someone to explain that to, I think is worthwhile. But in some sense, they should be able to actually respond. Do you guys agree?
yes, that sounds idealistic, but yes, I would definitely agree with that concept.
So are you saying that's not happening today, Derek?
Uh, I would say no, but
Okay.
to your point, after you're trying to talk to, in my opinion, becomes less relevant. And giving everybody else in that client journey the ability to see what's going on with you calling in is definitely a huge level up in terms of the client experience.
Got it. So again, one of the things that was highlighted the most in the communication challenges, the top two, multiple disconnected systems and then internal communications. So let's talk a little bit more about Microsoft Teams and how it's become more than simply a tool to facilitate meetings. So Derek, can you talk a little bit? I mean, I know you've worked with a lot of our clients, but also internally with Synergy on implementing Teams Voice and making Teams really the central point of communication. Can you talk more about why companies are making the decision to transition to Teams, not just for their telephony needs, but also other ways to collaborate? And how does it simplify the internal communications and collaboration?
Well, how long do you have, Dan? Right. So, Teams obviously it is part of the Microsoft ecosystem. It's part of what typically most clients are paying for, or most people pay for as part of the licensing. So my take is why not add voice services to that environment? And that's where you're having all of your communication happening, both internal and external, no matter what medium it's coming through, right? And so from a simplification perspective, you no longer have to say, oh, if I want to talk to Dan within my organization, I use Teams. But if I want to talk to, a client of mine externally, I have to use some other tool, right? Whether it's a third-party voice system or something else. Like, why would I want to do that? Making the end user or, your employee's journey easier because I know I have to use Teams to get to, to communicate both internally and externally. So you mentioned simplification, from an IT perspective, you're adding, as you add users, you add the licenses for the appropriate Microsoft offices, or Office that you have to do anyway. And Teams is, adding Teams is part of that journey from an administrative perspective as well. As CTO, one of my objectives is to consolidate vendors and consolidate tools, right? So, if I have a different company doing my voice services than Microsoft Teams, then, that's one more checkbox that I can show, I can show progress on saying, hey, I've eliminated a different vendor that's doing some service that's kind of related to what Teams does, but actually is exactly what Teams does. And so, tool consolidation is a big deal. So that's, I think, one of the other ways that Teams is helping simplify on the client side. And then, one more big ticket item from my perspective is security. Older systems that are just sitting in your closet are probably not being updated and patched as often as they should be. And that's a challenging business. It's a high risk business issue that needs to be thought about. That and also, older systems can be compromised and run up huge phone bills to, there's ways to have bad things happen, right? So, security is a big deal.
It's interesting, Derek. Can you just give me a little more on that? Because I think people, when they think of cybersecurity and making sure their infrastructure is secure, I think they typically are thinking of, their endpoints and, their users. But I don't think they typically think, oh, well, I guess my phone system could be breached. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So, there are ways to send phone calls to some location, typically in North America, that you can make money on as a hacker. There's ways to do that. And so if I have a compromised phone system and I can run 40,000 calls in the middle of the night to one of the Caribbean islands, I can make thousands of dollars in a night. So if I compromise a phone system, that is typically the first thing I'll try to do as a bad guy.
That is actually news to me, and I talk to Derek all the time. So I learn something new every day. So Diana, in your experience in seeing organizations move to Teams voice and use Teams as more of a collaboration tool, what do you think has been the biggest surprise for them after making the move?
I think the biggest surprise is really how quickly adoption actually occurs. I think that people think it's going to be this huge uplift, and it's going to be so hard to train your people, and how are we going to get people to use it? And they find that it's really not hard at all. Like, employees already use Teams all day, every day throughout their workday.
Yeah.
So I think extending it to the telephone, to telephony, really feels very natural for most people, or all people, really. I think organizations frequently discover that they gain much more than a phone replacement, right? They're enabling better collaboration, they're improving productivity, and they're creating a stronger connection between both their customer-facing and their back office teams. So going back to the first poll you did, it's not only just your external facing your external customers, but it's also improving the communication internally. I think that we all know that some organizations use Teams only internally and then use something completely different to talk to their external customers. But why? Why is that? Why would you run two separate things when you can do this all in Microsoft Teams?
And Diana, I just want to address a myth that I've heard, is that Teams, if you're using Teams for external phone calls, you cannot use a phone on your desk. That is most certainly not true at all. We can certainly add phones into that. True. But guess what? Over time, you're going to use that phone less and less, and
sure,
you'll use it just like you use it internally.
Yeah, that's so funny.
On your computer.
I was just on a sales call with one of our client managers yesterday, who told the client, I was the first one when we moved to Teams Voice who said, I need a phone on my desk. I need to have that phone because I've had a phone my whole career. And he said, after a while of just using my computer to have conversations, the handset was literally just sitting there collecting dust. And I'm like, why do I even need this? So I think that's an interesting story and one that resonates. The other thing for me that I think was the biggest surprise of bringing clients into the Teams environment was not just your ability to have a voice conversation with them. You can actually collaborate with them real time within Teams if you create the right type of environment where you can have secure spaces that allow clients in and secure spaces that don't allow clients in. And so you can have internal conversations and then also external conversations where you can share files, you can share information. It sort of was truly changed the dynamic of how quickly and effectively you can interact with clients, and was a true surprise for me.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to move on to another topic, and this is related to call center as a service, which I think is, so if you move to Teams Voice, that's one step. And then there's another step, which might be using it as your call center. To be able to route calls to the right places, to be able to do the things you need to do. I'm sort of stealing Derek's thunder here because the first question is, can you give us a definition of call center as a service? So Derek, you know this much better than me, so why don't you go ahead and take it away?
I'm actually going to defer my answer to Diana.
Yeah.
Sure, I can take it. I mean, Contact Center as a Service is a cloud-based customer experience platform that enables organizations to manage customer interactions across voice, email, chat, SMS, social media, you name it, any digital channel, really, without deploying and maintaining on-premise contact center infrastructure. Now, I did get that definition kind of from the web because I wanted to give you the actual definition of it. But it's really a customer experience platform, if you will, that's not hosted on-prem. It's hosted in the cloud. Did I answer your question, Dan?
You did, and I was supposed to ask you that question, Diana.
That's
so
all right.
That
That's
is why
all right.
Derek
Much
deferred.
better answer than I would have given. So
Your first initials are both D. I was looking at my notes. I didn't quite. I just jumped the gun on that one, so I apologize. So Derek, can you actually talk about why you think context is so important in customer conversations, or if possible, even give an example of why that's so important?
I think at this point in time, and they're getting it from other organizations, and it's apparent when it's not there in your organization or our organization or anyone's organization. And ultimately, the goal is to create that better client experience, which ultimately can help separate you from others that are doing similar things that you do as a company. So that's my, yeah. The Zappos shoe experience is something they've defined their business on, and their infrastructure supports that client experience from soup to nuts. So
thank you. So Diana, I referenced a little earlier the 360-degree customer view. So I talked about it from the customer experience, that somebody kind of understands who I am, what my issue is, why am I calling, what have I done with you before, so that you're able to respond to the reason for my interacting with you. I'd be interested in you giving us sort of the opposite perspective, which is you talked earlier about how call center agents actually get frustrated because they don't have what they need to be able to effectively respond to customer inquiries. So can you talk a little bit about what that 360-degree view actually looks like from the agent's perspective?
Sure. That a true 360 degree view brings together full communication history. So it's really that all the CRM data that's out there, all the case information, the account details, if there's previous purchases, any service records, customer preferences, everything has to be there in one single pane of glass, right? So the agent can actually access that quickly, immediately, and they understand who that customer is, why they're calling, what's happened previously, and what action should be taken next. This way, the agent isn't fumbling around or just making that customer more and more frustrated because they're asking the same questions over and over and over because they already have all that customer information right at their fingertips and right in front of them.
From an agent perspective, that sort of gives them, it gives them it empowers them.
It's definitely
to
empowering.
address the issue, right?
Correct.
I think empowerment is a huge issue when it comes to addressing customer experiences, because if you don't feel like you have the right answer or that you know what the customer's interaction has been, you're going to sort of kind of try to circle around until you hit the target, right? Instead of feeling empowered. Oh, I know exactly the answer to this and why this person is asking this question, and I'm fully prepared to answer that because I can see what they've done with us previously. So I think that's great.
Exactly.
So Derek, what would you say separates an average customer experience from an exceptional one?
I think the exceptional customer experiences are result from the agent having the ability to solve the problem or the reason why they're calling, whether that's asking for information or solving a question that you're asking or something like that. I think if we are able to effectively solve the issue that you're calling from, that's an acceptable or an exceptional client experience. I think although other things that degrade exceptional is asking the same question twice, whether it's you or asking the same, if I call a credit card company, sometimes they ask me for the same credit card information a couple different times. That is beyond frustrating, right? So asking the same question twice, even if it's a different person. And I think although also, kind of echoing what Diana said a little bit, we need to interact with them on the medium of their choice, right? So whether that's SMS or text, or chat or phone or email, all those things need to be in the way that the client or the end customer wants to interact with your system, right? So, and we need to, no matter what medium they're on, we need to track all of that and track the interactions of our organization with the company, or and make sure that we are providing a consistent level of service no matter what medium it's on. That's, I think,
Yeah.
those kinds of things are what levels up average interaction to exceptional interactions.
That's a great answer. And I think, one of the, I just made a call the other day to a customer service actually, and they asked me for the automated agent up front asked me for all my account information. And then the person picked up the phone, and what was the first thing they did?
Your
Ask me
account
for
number.
all my account information. So why did you put that up front on the automated agent to ask me the question? If you were just going to have the person who picked up the phone ask me the question again, right? Those are the things that I think people have to go through on a regular basis that cause frustration. So I think in some ways the bar is pretty low for today's technology, right? To be able to help me as a customer. I mean, ultimately, the goal would be to get even higher than that, where you're providing a customer with something they didn't even know they needed, right? But ultimately, I think just being able to provide that level of understanding initially is good. And I think many people don't think about whether or not how realistic it is for them. Maybe you're a small company, or maybe you don't have that many people working for you to be able to manage different modalities of support like chat and SMS. But I think many of today's modern solutions are going to allow for that to be the case if you choose to do it. So I think those are all great points. So thank you for sharing. So, Diana, you brought this up a little earlier, and we would be remiss if we didn't bring the topic of AI, because AI is ubiquitous, as we know, and is a part of every conversation. So I think we can talk a little bit, because I think in particular, I would say in some ways, many customer service, many people who are providing customer service to their customers have already adopted AI. We speak to phone systems all the time and AI agents to try and get us routed to the right place. So, but I don't know, like I said just now, when you have an automated agent that asks you the account information, then the person gets on and asks you that, is it really providing value to you? So can you talk, Diana, from your experience working for Anywhere Now, where you think AI has the potential to create the greatest value in customer interactions today?
I think AI is really creating value in every stage of the customer journey, because you kind of see where it's assisting agents in real time, kind of everywhere, right? It's summarizing conversations, it surfaces knowledge articles, it automates routine interactions, it analyzes the sentiment of both the agent and the customer. It approves the routing decisions, like it tells you where that call or where that chat or where that email or where that interaction should go. And it helps to identify opportunities for process improvement as well. So it really enables organizations to deliver better service while increasing operational efficiency, if you will. And I think that organizations are really adopting it in all different ways. I mean, they're kind of using it in like post-call work, pre-call work, during the call work. I mean, I think it can be used in all different use cases. And AI is such a big buzzword out there, and I think, company thinks they need it, but I think we really need to drill down to see where each each contact center really wants to use it and utilize it the most throughout the customer journey.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's fascinating because when I talk about it, and I did this earlier in the call too, it's about how I, as a customer, have experienced interacting with an AI agent. What you described is really how does AI help the human agent be more effective in providing support to the customer, right? Which is a
Exactly.
much different experience. It's probably more valuable in some ways in the sense that it will allow them to get to the answer they need to get to much more quickly, but also allow them to follow up, allow future people who may be interacting with that same customer to quickly understand what the interaction has been. It's a huge amount of information that it is able to pull together to really support the human in their providing that exceptional customer service. So I think that's a great way to put it. And I think I thank you for the answer. So Derek, what would you say is the number one barrier to enabling AI as a customer, in assisting customer communication?
Well, I think ultimately it's the same answer with implementing AI in any of your business processes. I think it's a willingness to experiment and a willingness not to bite off more than you can chew, right? So I think, let's look at what you and where could we improve agent interaction or client interaction, and then solve that issue, measure the results, and then move on to the next issue, right? So I think that's the kind of walk run kind of situation that people that are navigating this AI concept
Right.
need to embrace. Also, to the point, obviously the point of this IdeaLab is understanding the art of what's possible, right? So there's so many different things we can do with it. The challenge is describing that in a way that we can digest, right? So understanding the art of what's possible is a barrier to biting off little chunks of AI to help you on your journey, right? So I think that's one of the biggest barriers there is with it right now.
Yeah, and I think, our customer success director talks frequently about, encouraging people to keep a pad next to their desk and just sort of talk about what's frustrated me today, right? And sort of jot it down as you're doing. Is it a repetitive process? Is it a access to information issue? Is it a collaborating with your teammates issue? And start to capture that information. And then I think it really provides the opportunity then because frequently if you ask somebody what are your barriers today, and they're so sort of ingrained in the daily activities that they're not really thinking about it. They can't really look back and think about it. They need to write it down when it's happening, right? And be able to say, this is just driving me insane, right? And so you capture that, and then you can start to have a conversation around that. And it allows you to have a much different conversation. So I think that's a great point.
And I shudder to agree with using a pen and piece of paper next to your computer to write that information down. But it helps. It really does.
I appreciate your forbearance on allowing us to use analog tools, Derek.
Exactly.
I know as a CTO, that pains you significantly.
Yeah.
So let's do this next. I want to do a little bit of a quick fire round to end our conversation today with our presenters. We're going to determine whether I'm going to make a bold statement here, or it might be somewhat bold. And you're going to give me a thumbs up if you think it's a reality, or a thumbs down if you think it's a myth. Again, that's thumbs up for a reality, thumbs down for a myth. So we're going to start with number one. Companies that answer the phone the fastest provide the best customer experience. Myth or reality? Derek had a little trouble remembering. That isn't. They are saying that's a myth. So why do you think that's a myth, Diana?
Because just because you answer the phone fastest doesn't mean anything. If you're missing all of the information, just because I pick up the phone, I don't know anything about you. or whatever, and I have to ask you all your information and what have you, I could just frustrate you more. Fast
Yeah.
is not better. I want all the information. I want to, maybe it rang a little bit more, longer, but I had all your information and I said, Dan, I know the reason that you're calling. I realized that your last shipment was XYZ, took 4 days longer than normal. This is why, and here's what we're going to do to remedy that. We're going to give you a 25% off coupon on your next shipment or whatever, and I can lead with that. You're going to be a much happier customer than me picking up the phone and being like, I'm sorry, who's this calling?
Right.
What are you calling about? And going into all that spiel.
No,
And
that
yet-
is well said.
Yeah. And yet many of our KPIs in measuring, customer service continue to be based on time, right? Like, how quickly did you do this? How quickly did you solve the problem? How it's always measured in time and not necessarily measured in what was the customer's experience
Yeah.
and how how comprehensively and effectively were you able to solve their problem, right?
It should be first call resolution, not how quickly you picked up your headset.
Yes. All right. Bold statement number 2. Customers don't care what technology you use to solve their problems. Myth or reality? Good job, Derek. So why don't you tell us why you think that's the case?
I think as long as you solve the problem, how you do that shouldn't matter. As long as you're, meeting, long-term business objectives and that kind of thing and costing. And, I think if I can solve your problem in a way that's valuable to you, then how I do that is near irrelevant. But I
So
can
let me
see,
throw a little
I can
wrench
see the
in-
other side of that.
Let me throw a little wrench into that. Like, what if you don't offer the technology that I want to use to communicate with you? So let's say I wanted to use chat and you don't offer that. In that case, they probably care, right?
Yeah, I would say that. I would agree.
Okay. For the most part, the technology is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you understand who they are.
And it's relevant how, yes. And, to earlier points, if I know that a medium is going to best solve my problem, that's the one I'm going to choose, right? And so, obviously the more that I can put out there, the wider the net is that I'm gathering experiences, but, having multiple ways to solve my problem is typically good. So that helps the client experience.
All right, bold statement number 3. AI will handle a majority of routine customer interactions before human ever joins the conversation within 1 to 3 years. Myth or reality?
I'm still going this way.
You need to lift your hand.
I know,
up
I'm
higher,
still
Diane.
going that way because I think a year is.
So why did you say no? Why did you say myth, Derek? Or were you in the middle? I couldn't really tell.
In the middle, I think at this point we're still working through some of the social challenges with AI and whether it's a good thing for humanity or a bad thing. I think the jury's still out. And so ultimately, I think that it can solve problems faster than, handling routine customer interactions. I think it certainly can happen now. But, are the end users willing to interact with AI to have that happen? So
Yeah.
I think it can, from a technology perspective, it absolutely can happen within 1 to 3 years. It could probably happen now. But, from an end user client experience perspective, is that what you want? Right.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anyone does. And so that's how I'm in the middle on that answer. So it's a good
Diana,
question.
you were kind of on the fence as well. Why were you on the fence?
I think for kind of the same reasons. I think that, I think a lot of people are afraid that AI is taking jobs and things of that nature. And what AI is really in this scenario is really there to assist the human agents, right? It's not there to take jobs away. It's there to take a lot of the menial tasks or the repetitive tasks that we talked about, where everybody gets frustrated. I want to talk to an agent. I want to talk to an agent, that kind of stuff, instead of the pushing the buttons and repeating yourself and your mom's maiden name and your first dog and the first street you lived on and all that stuff, kind of taking that stuff out of it. That's where I think everybody would agree that AI is a really good thing. But I think there is still that stigma that's out there. I agree with Derek that everybody's afraid that AI is going to take everybody's job away. None of us are going to have a job and whatever else. So I do believe that stigma's out there. I also believe that, the 1 to 3 year thing is lofty. I think a lot of it's happening now, and I think it can be before the 1 to 3 years.
And Diana, I agree with the word you used in that answer, enhancement. That's what AI is doing. Enhancing the experience of the agent, enhancing the experience of the caller or client.
Exactly.
It's enhancing, right?
Enhancing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a key word.
So I have one more bold statement. Call center solutions are only for large companies. Myth or reality? That didn't take long. So Diane, I'll let you take this one first. Why do you say that?
Because they're not only for large companies. I mean, almost any size company can use a call center solution. Imagine if you're even a small company, you want to be able to provide the greatest customer experience you can to your customers. And how are you going to do that if you don't have something in place to be able to provide that? So, I mean, I know in my company, we have a number of different solutions. There are call center solutions to fit every size company and every size budget, whether it's a call center light solution, just an automatic call distribution solution, or a full-blown contact center. There is something in everybody's budget for every type contact center.
Derek, thoughts?
Obviously, I agree with what Diana's saying. And what is a large company these days, right? So, large human, large revenue, large, the way we're treating agents now, AI agents, and I'm at an AI show, and so this is top of mind for me right now, trade show. An AI agent is the equivalent of, possibly a person doing some of that task work that you've written down on a piece of paper that is like mind-numbing and something that you don't want to do every day, right? So, and just recently there was a $1 billion company created by one person, one human being with a $1 billion company that sold it to somebody else. So I think, to Diana's point, that there is a way that contact center, call center solutions can be used by companies of all sizes. What ways can I clean up client experience? If we have multiple offices, do I have 10 different phone numbers to call? If I have, a number at each office, let's put all that into one central point of interaction, track how that's working across all the different company offices, and, track all that information in our CRM system. And, there's so many different ways to enhance who we interact with externally on a regular basis that, these solutions are available for any company of any size. And
don't forget, these solutions can also be used internally. Think about HR hotlines, IT help desks, things of that nature as well.
Right.
That is a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yep. Great point.
Yep.
Well, listen, I want to say thank you to both of you. It has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed speaking with you. I think you've provided us with a lot to think about, a lot of food for thought, and sort of given me, Derek taught me something I didn't even know today, which was great. And I always love to learn something new. So Diana and Derek, thank you so much for joining us. And thank all of you who were able to spend time with us today to talk about communication and customer experience. And we look forward to having many of you join us on our next IdeaLab. Look for information coming out soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.